How many years have you been coaching, Tom?
I've been coaching for about 25 years or so.
I've been coaching for 10 years now.
I have been coaching for 5 years.
I've been coaching for at least 5 years now, going on 6.
5 or 6, I think.
5 years now.
Since I've been at 18, so 6 years.
And over that time, what's the biggest overarching theme or lesson you've learned from your coaching experience?
So one of the things I've noticed is that people really tend to measure the success of their training through comparison to others or rates of gains they might have seen online, rather than measuring or trying to understand what is a meaningful change for them in their training that has an impact on their climbing. The meaningful change is the aspect of applying whatever training gains you've made to your climbing on the wall. For example, someone might use a fingerboard to improve their half crimp strength. When it comes to measuring the meaningful change of this, they may look to check in with their confidence on a certain circuit at the climbing wall that focuses on edges on the wall that would show them whether their training is translating to their climbing. If their confidence improves on this circuit at the climbing wall, then we can be confident that the training is the right approach for helping them in their climbing. This change in confidence that we see on the edges on the wall may be regardless of the size of change in their actual fingerboard training. Someone may have made quite modest improvements on the fingerboard, but feel a really big impact in their confidence. On the flip side, someone might have seen a really big change in their training on the fingerboard, but this may not have translated to their confidence on the wall and in their climbing. In this case, we've learned something. We need to take a step back and have a look at some different approaches that we could take in training.
I think the big thing that I've learned over the years of coaching and training is that focus is utterly critical to producing the best athletes and best performances. And what I mean by that is that in a particular training cycle or year, you should choose just maybe 2 things to really focus on and improve in your climbing or your training. Don't spread yourself too thinly. You may have 5 or 6 things you want to work on, but that's probably too much. So do those 2 things, focus, get the quality in, move forward over that training cycle, and then the next year or the next training cycle, swap it up and find the next 2 most important things to focus on. So it's all about quality, intention, that focus element. So an example of this might be a climber who's wanting to climb their first V8 and break through that grade plateau, and also at the same time work on their finger strength. And what I recommend for that individual would be that they would focus on a certain style and probably rock type to be able to break into that V8 zone. So they've got a degree of focus of knowing when they go out or when they do sessions, they're going after this thing. And likewise, if they were doing their finger strength, is that they'd look at probably 1 or 2 grip types, and they'd look at 1 or 2 methods of actually improving that finger strength. Where this would fall down, I would say this is not a focused approach, is if the person said, scattergun, I'm just gonna go after any V8 in the country, anywhere, whatever weekend. I'll just keep trying loads of different random ones. That's not very focused. Likewise, knowing that you might have 4 or 5 different tools that you can use for finger strength training, campus boarding, fingerboarding, lifting, system board work, and trying to do all of them just to improve finger strength in an unfocused way is unlikely to have such good results compared to taking a focused approach and really dialing in what you're using and putting the intention and quality into it.
So the biggest thing I've taken away is taking into account climber psychology. And within that, it's making sure that the climber enjoys the training that they're doing. My advice to the self-coach climber is you don't have to suffer to see results. If all your friends are going outside because it's a beautiful day and you're like, oh, I've got to do my indoor training session, you're not going to enjoy it, and you're not going to put your whole heart and effort into that training session, and you're going to get a much better stimulus if you try to mimic that session outdoors, out with your friends, having a good time. A pattern that I've seen is when people aren't enjoying their training, they end up getting mental fatigue and then stop training. The best way to avoid that is to find things that you enjoy, or remove the things that you don't enjoy and swap them out with things that you do enjoy.
For me, I think it's asking your why. So what is it about climbing that you love and that motivates you? And I think good things to think about are, what days have you had so far in your climbing that have been the most memorable for you, or what parts of those days have you really loved? Because that will help inform you in working out your goals. So a good example could be, I really love multi-pitch climbing big days out, or at the other end of the spectrum it could be, I really like going out on my own, a solo session on a limit level boulder. And once you've drilled down into that's my why, that's what I love about the climbing, that's the experience I want to have again in the future, that can inform the approach to your training. So for the person who's really into multi-pitch, big days out, durability, day fitness, lots of volume are going to feature heavily in their training and their preparation. Whereas it's going to be completely the opposite for somebody who wants to go out on their own, love the experience of trying a limit level boulder. They'll be working more at the strength and power end of the spectrum. It, quite honestly, is just impossible to be good at everything at once. And many of us do have that tendency to want to feel good at everything or feel like they should be good at everything. And I think if you just take that step back and ask your why first, then you can really sort of work towards the goals that are important to you.
So it would be consistency, but consistency in training is not really news for anyone. Most people understand that's really important to make those long-term gains and improve in your climbing, but it'd be more about how I find ways to help people be consistent in their training. And there's 3 main ways in which I'll guide people in their training so that they can keep it consistent. The first one is about enjoyment, and I'll have clients that fall in love with board climbing, for example. And if that's the case, then board climbing will feature heavily in their training plan. The second point is having convenient equipment available. So someone might have a TRX at home, for example, and I might think that maybe the bench press is more valid for their training, but if they can keep that consistent by getting to a TRX, and because it's more convenient for them, then that's going to be what features in their training. The last point then is about setting training targets or process goals, and lots of people do this when they set targets to do things like the one-arm pull-up or a lever lift, and although these might be seen as sort of feats of strength which don't translate that well to climbing, if people set these goals, get really motivated by them, then it's going to really help the journey. I know that if someone trains for a one-arm pull-up, they're going to build pulling strength in that journey. If they're training for the lever lift, they're building core strength and mid-back strength in that journey. That is going to contribute to their climbing, even if that end goal that they've set isn't particularly valid to the goals in climbing.
KISS just means keep it simple, stupid. And what we're looking at, or what I'm looking at with it, is how can I take the basic principles of training and apply them to my coaching. I don't tend to follow fads or the most complex forms of training, because a lot of the time we don't need to do that. We just need to keep the simple processes or principles like progressive overload in mind, and looking at hitting consistent training over longer periods of time.
The main lesson I've learned in terms of my coaching and how I approach working with clients is to work out what behaviour patterns are consistent with the clients and what are most useful for them. And a key element of that is understanding how much energy and focus that person has to put into their climbing in the context of their entire life. So a lot of our clients have jobs, families, and many other commitments, and we need to understand how much time and energy they actually have to put towards their goals and their climbing, and at what points of the year that changes. So a good example of how to do this is how much time do you have in a normal week to give to your climbing with a lot of energy and focus. It's really easy for a lot of people to try and do more than that, and then they burn out. So look at the consistent behaviour patterns week in, week out, which allows you to train to your optimal. So the big mistake that a lot of people make is they try to put too much time into their training or climbing for too long a period. You can definitely have really intense periods within the last month, last 6 weeks, where you really commit a lot of your time and effort towards your training and climbing. But you've got to know that can't just last year round in a normal lifestyle. So try and work out how long you can stay focused for, whether that's on an outdoor project or indoor training, and then allow yourself to have some time off to decompress and relax.